Welcome, folks. Glad to see you on this Monday afternoon. You are at a deep dive presented by Entrepreneurs Forever. And I'm going to open my screen in a moment and we will get started. So, share screen. You. Slideshow. Chris, can you confirm that you're seeing what you might mean to be seeing?
Yep, I see what
Great.
I see.
Perfect. Okay, welcome, folks. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Deborah Gallant, and I am your host, but I'm probably not going to say as much as I do in some of our webinars because this stuff is so complicated. I'm so glad to have an expert here. Chris O'Brien from Dative, he'll tell you more about himself, is presenting about getting found online in the age of AI. And if you've done a Google search for your own business lately, you may have noticed you don't come to the top of the search results like you used to. And we're going to learn all about that today. So let me remind you of our agenda. We do introductions. What we'd like to ask you folks to do is to tell us who you are and what your business is in the chat so that Chris can sort of see who's here. I'm going to tell you about our upcoming programs. Then we're going to get into the presentation, and we are. Oops, I went backwards. We're going to open it up for unrecorded Q&A, and Chris has offered to actually look at different people's websites and to see if your uh, search optimized and whether you're doing all the right things for yourself at the end. So that'll be fantastic. So that'll happen at the end and we won't be recording it. For those of you who may not know, Entrepreneurs Forever, our mission is to empower all small business owners to grow thriving businesses that sustain their families, support their communities. This is a monthly program. Next month, we're going to go deep into AI, 5 AI strategies your business can use right now. And I'll be your host in August when we talk about networking that works. Okay, here's our official disclaimer. This presentation does not take the place of professional advice from your own paid advisors. Don't come back and sue us, please. And without further ado, I'm going to let Chris talk. He's going to do his presentation, and then we're going to do the open Q&A, which will not be recorded. So I'm going to stop sharing and let the folks in who are in the waiting room. And Chris, you can take it from here. Maybe tell everyone who you are, and then you can share your screen.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for everyone for attending today. Glad to meet you all, and hopefully you can leave here learning a little bit more about how you can use some of these tools and tactics to improve your website's visibility from an SEO standpoint and with an AI focus as well. Obviously, that's kind of the buzzword lately. Looks like there's a pretty cool webinar next month about that as well. So maybe I'll have to attend that one. So I'll share my screen momentarily, just really quick. I know you're here to learn about AI, not about me, so I'll just be really brief. I've been doing websites and SEO for nearly 20 years. We focus primarily for builders and architects, so we really focus on helping them generate more qualified leads through their website, and we use custom-built websites and then search engine optimization to help them achieve that. Over the years, if anyone, quick show of hands, who has ever done anything related to like SEO for their website or tried to like look into that or research it or do any kind of updates like that? Okay, cool. So some of you have probably learned a little bit of this. What we'll be covering, we have a lot to cover, so I'll get into it pretty quickly, and it can sort of get a little technical, so I'll try to keep it fairly top level, but I have a lot of resources that I'll share at the end of the presentation, and Deborah will share as well. So you can click through all of those and look. I think this will be recorded, so you can come back and kind of review that. And I think the important thing to keep in mind too is, even if you only implement a fraction of what we cover or some of these, and maybe you start to do some this month and have a goal, anything you can do towards these efforts will have some payoff eventually, and it's not going to be a kind of a overnight success. So you're going to want to, I would say SEO is kind of like a garden. You can't just expect to like plant something and have something grow the next day. You have to kind of continually put effort into it. But I think these are all really great tactics that you can use to see some of those results long term. So
okay, and as Chris is bringing this up, I'm going to remind you, if you can write your business name and type where you are. If Chris is going to do an example, wouldn't it be better for him to do an example of something that's actually a business who's on here? What are people searching for when they search for you? So, Chris, go right ahead.
All right, great. So let's see. Are you able to see the screen here? I have the kind of
Yep,
title
I'm all
slide
good.
up. Okay, excellent. So, as you all know, getting found online in the age of AI, the new rules of SEO. So, just there's a lot of can be a lot of acronyms in the world of technology. So, I'll try to explain all these again. If you have any questions during the presentation about some of the things I'm discussing that aren't specific necessary to your business, I'm happy to answer those during the video that is being recorded, so that if other people are watching it, we don't want to get too much into the specific of your business. But once the recording is over, then we can actually run your website if we want to through some of the tools that we talk about and get some actual actionable advice. So to that point, SEO is search engine optimization. And that's really just anything you're doing activities you're doing to increase the visibility of your website in search results. So search results is exactly what it sounds like when somebody goes to Google and they type for a business name. Where do you show up, and are you at the top, are you at the bottom, are you on page 35 or position 1? So optimizing your website so that you show up closer to the top of the page means you're going to be more likely that people have click on you and get to your website. So a lot of the stuff we cover here is sort of SEO focused, but now that AI is being introduced into these results, it's sort of changing the game a little bit. So there's a lot of tactics that have kind of evolved to do well from a search engine standpoint, but also from how that works in the context of AI. So welcome to the new search landscape. As I said, it's shifting, it's always evolving. Tools and tactics that worked 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it's always evolving, and AI is just kind of the latest iteration of that. So to be competitive, you kind of have to be able to evolve and change your approach. When we talk about the search landscape, fundamentally you're seeing a shift of how people are doing searches. So, everyone's familiar with the Google search. You go up here and you type in a couple keywords or a phrase, and you get a list of results, and then you kind of scroll through and decide which one seems like the most likely. You click on a link, maybe you feel like it's not a good fit, you click back and you go back to the search results, or maybe you change the things you're searching for. That is now shifting to either using Google search and getting results that are augmented by AI in a search results, or a lot of people are now starting to use things like ChatGTP, which is the screenshot here below. Funny, they look fairly similar. So just kind of a search bar and, you type in some things, but really it's a complete fundamental shift of this is more, I'm searching just for some keywords, and then the onus is on the user to decide what to click on, versus when it gets to the AI, it's now you're having a conversation and then maybe getting your questions answered right from that chat session, or maybe eventually clicking through to a website. So we've seen, and trends are showing, there's a lot of less traffic getting to people's websites from search engines now, because some people are getting their questions answered right in that chat interface. They're never actually clicking through to a website. So we can get into that a little bit more throughout this presentation, how you can kind of try to overcome that. Who here has used something like ChatGTP or Claude or some sort of AI bot for conversational searches? Okay, yeah, pretty much everyone, right? Yeah. I had a friend who's a landscaper who I would say is not very tech savvy at all, was saying he's using ChatGTP to do searches. I'm like, okay, this is like everyone's starting to use this now. It's not just kind of the tech savvy people. So we're kind of this shift of how people are doing searches online, and it's not just searches like ChatGTP. AI is really becoming more integrated into a lot of tools we use every day. So I use Gmail. They now have like Gmail summaries, or it can write a draft email for you. Microsoft has Copilot. So a lot of the tools and software people use every day, if you use Canva for designing things like that, a lot of the stuff now has AI built into that. So it's sort of this shift in how people use software across things besides just search. And why does this really matter? Well, companies that are aware of this and are taking action to kind of stay ahead of this are noticing some benefits. So 43% of people 43% of small businesses notice a drop in website traffic after some of the AI updates that have come in the last year. But businesses that have been implementing some of these strategies saw a 30% increase in local search compared to those that didn't. So if you are not paying attention to this, if you're just going to try to keep things going as usual, you're probably going to start to see some negative results. You're not going to show up as much. You might not be getting as much traffic to your website, and you're just not going to be as visible as you could be as if you're a little bit more proactive in taking some action to stay ahead of the curve here. So the good news is a lot of the stuff that we're doing is good for AI, but it's also good for your users. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if ChatGTP comes to your website. That's not your customer, right? Your customer is somebody who's actually going to end up hiring you or buying a product from you or booking a phone call with you. So all the stuff we're trying to do here today is to make your website more visible from search engines and from AI, but with the end goal that whoever is using that AI is going to ideally click your website and then become a customer for you or whatever that means in your your specific business. So the tactics we're going to do are things that are conversational, it's informative, it's helpful, it's trustworthy, and really at the end of the day, it's stuff that hopefully supports your business objectives. So we kind of understand how the landscape has shifted, and let's take a look at what that actually looks like when people are doing these searches. So there's a couple ways. If people are traditionally still using Google or Bing or doing searches like that, AI is now becoming integrated into those searches through what they're calling SGE, or Search Generative Experience. So that's Google's AI coming up with answers to your question and trying to give you results. And they're still going to give you those lists and links of websites below that. But if you've done a search recently, you'll notice at the top, there's sort of this AI overview, or AIO, that tries to answer your question and potentially can link to some sites from there, but can also give you potentially a full answer from there. So now, even if you were killing it in SEO and you were at the very top of that list, now you're already going to be further down the page because Google's AI is now going to be at the top of that search results. So let me zoom in for a second. So this was just, I had done a search for planning a visit to Cape Cod. I'm here on the Cape. Probably a pretty common search. A lot of people vacation here. And so somebody's doing planning a visit to Cape Cod. Now you see this generative AI answer here, exploring the scenic beauty of Cape Cod. They give me a 5-day plan with specific locations. They give me places like Chatham's Fish Pier Market that I can visit. And if I click show all, this is a whole list of links that they've cited in their generative answer here that are going to now potentially get me to link to the Chatham Fish Pier Market. So if
Chris,
I own a
in the olden days, what would that search have turned up?
Sure. And actually, you could see that right now, and I'll show you how people are sort of circumventing this. So some people are like, I don't want the AI answer. I don't really want that. So, what was that search? It was planning a visit to Cape Cod, right?
Uh-huh. I just wanted to compare apples to apples.
Sure. So if I'm saying planning a visit to Cape Cod, well, I'm signed into my search now. Let me say planning a visit to San Francisco. I'm signed into my Google, so it knows I'm running ads for certain things, so that's why it looked a little bit differently. So planning a trip to San Francisco, we have this generative AI, and it breaks down, all that stuff that we just looked at. It gives me some museums, it looks like some probably restaurants and things like that, some places I can stay, and it has these links here. So this whole section is AI taking over the top of the search results. And then now I would scroll down to the bottom, and this is sort of more what the traditional search would look like. So I can see there's some sponsored ads here for Expedia. And then we get into even way, way down here, some of the organic results. So this would just be people that are ranking well naturally from a search engine standpoint. If you're doing a search yourself and you don't want to see all that AI, if at the top of your search you do minus, so the negative sign AI, it will actually give you a search and it will eliminate any of that AI stuff. So that's just kind of a shortcut that you can use in your own searches if you want to say, like, just show me stuff without that. So maybe it's best dog beds. I don't know.
It's that you spelled it wrong, but that's okay.
Dog beds. So if I do minus AI, it'll now eliminate that and just give me some other results. So
I did not know you could do that. Wow, worth the price.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. Yes, a lot of those little operators. you can actually, if you do minus and then anything else, so maybe I say, best restaurants born minus seafood, that'll give me results that don't include that, ideally that word seafood if it's in some of the things. So there's some other search operators you can use, but that minus AI is a big one right now. So that will show those results without that.
Thank you.
So, but as you can see, that huge top section of real estate is all generated through AI. So that what's called AIO or AI overviews is becoming the way most search results are now being added to search by default. And as you could see, there was some businesses that were cited up there. And if you were cited up there, data reports are showing that you would get 317% more traffic than businesses that were not. And it's just natural. Like if I'm doing this search and I'm saying, okay, this is interesting, I'm much more likely to click in here somewhere that's being actively recommended as part of the strategy rather than scrolling way, way down the page and trying to find something else that I think might be a good fit. So the other consideration is if you are getting your questions answered from here, you may not even click through to the website to learn about whatever that is you're searching for. You might have your question answered sufficiently. So these AIOs are potentially reducing clicks through to the website for informational type queries. So, if it's just, is it a full moon, or what's the best month of whatever, something that's very, very informational, your content on your website, if it was answering those questions, those might now just be able to be answered by AI. So it's going to require you to go a little bit deeper with your website and answer either more robustly or answer things that are not just sort of basic informational type queries. So this is the search generative experience that people are doing Google searches. But then, as you saw, there's now conversational AI. So a lot of people, instead of doing a Google search, they're jumping right into Chat GTP, or Claude is the AI that I use. There's a number of ones out there. And starting to have that whole conversation. So, looking back into the same thing, help me plan a 5-day summer vacation to Cape Cod. And now it breaks down that same thing. It gives me recommendations for the Hyannis Harbor Hotel, Spanky's Clam Shack and Seaside Saloon, the Pilgrim Monument. So now I can go to some of these results potentially from Chat GTP directly rather than doing like a Google search result. So looking at my analytics and some of my clients' analytics, so we see where the traffic is coming from. Chat GTP is starting to send more and more traffic to people's websites directly from that platform rather than like a Google search or social media or email marketing.
But you can't
We're seeing AI.
You can't submit your site to Chat GPT. It's just going to find it, right?
Exactly. And a great practice, which we can get into, is see what ChatGPT knows about your website. You can actually ask this, tell me everything you know about your business name in this location, and see what it has in terms of its sort of knowledge base around you. And it gets that from a number of ways. Part of that is your website, but part of it is just everything else it knows about your business across the web, or what's called kind of your knowledge graph. So what does your website say about you? But what does Yelp say about you? What does Google My Business Places say about you in terms of reviews and things like that? So, we're going to talk about the website primarily, but we're going to talk about some of those other touch points and things you want to make sure you do across those so that they're consistent. So that, ChatGPT or AI is informed and has the accurate information about you. So these were primarily as of, June, June 16th, 2025 are kind of the two main ways the majority of people are doing searches and how AI is impacting that. A year from now, that might look completely different. It might be even more conversational. Like I know I've installed ChatGPT on my app or my app on my mobile phone, and we'll have verbal conversations with it. So some of that's shifting. I mean, that's still ChatGPT, but I think it's interesting to see how this will evolve, in the months and years to come. But what we know right now is between search generative experience, Google searches and Bing, and this conversational AI, these chat bots, there's really a lot of opportunities to update your website and put content out that's going to be more AI friendly. So that's where we're going to get into kind of the new rules of SEO. One thing to think about first and to understand, to help you, is to understand how AI evaluates your business. So as I just said, ChatGTP, you can't send ChatGPT a link and say, this is what my business is about, and here's what I do, and here's all my information. It's crawling the web, it's looking at all sorts of stuff and trying to make an assessment about that. So some of the things it looks at is the clarity of information. Is the content on your website really crystal clear about who you are, what you do, what you offer from a services standpoint, where you're located? It looks things like credibility signals. So do you have good ratings if you're on Yelp or Google My Business or other places like that? Trip recommending things. Do you have reviews? Are they good reviews? Are they current and updated? Do you respond to the reviews? Are you trustworthy and credible? The content quality. So not just the clarity of it, is it clear, but is it good, rich quality content? People are getting to the site. Are they spending a fair amount of time on the website and really reading through that content and getting valuable information? They look at the technical structure. So is the site well organized? Is it easy to browse? Is it mobile friendly? Does it load really quickly? So a lot of the stuff AI is looking at is the kind of the same stuff that Google and other search engines are looking at. They want to give people accurate information. They want to have it be useful and relevant and user friendly. So they don't want to send somebody to a website that's really hard to navigate or has bugs or doesn't have a security certificate, things like that. And cross-platform consistency is big as well. So I'll show you what I mean by that, but making sure the information about your business is consistent across a lot of places. So if your Google My Business profile has different phone number listed than your website, now it's confusing and it kind of breaks that credibility and trust. So understanding how AI kind of evaluates your business, there's some tools you can use and tactics to implement these changes to your website to make it AI friendly. So one is be the answer, not just the result. As you saw, when somebody's doing a search, SEO or AI is generating an answer to that. And so the more descriptive you can be in your search, in your web pages, like if I have a page on my website that talks about planning websites for architects, and it's a very robust, deep article. It talks about static template websites versus custom designed, how to structure your portfolio page. It has a lot of content. And so now if they're doing a search, my website's more likely to be cited because it has a really deep answer. If I just had a paragraph or two, it's not really providing a whole lot of value of information. So, I'll show you a couple examples, but content that are selected for those featured snippets, and the featured snippets, just to go back here, are these in that AI overview where it's suggested like Chatham Fish Pier, things like that. It's pulling in, like it's citing other websites. So websites that were pulled in and cited in those things received 36% more clicks than even the first organic position. And when I say organic position, it's like the regular search below all the AI. So even if you were doing awesome in SEO and you were at the top of that page, you're now only going to be getting about half the number of clicks than somebody who's cited in that AI. So that's really the place where you're trying to get to be with your search results. So rule one is have a really robust content on your site that gives exhaustive answers. If I'm talking about how to plant a vegetable garden, don't just give me a paragraph or two, because I could probably find 1,000 websites that give me that same information. I need a really deep breakdown to, well, are you planting a vegetable garden in New England? What type of vegetables are you looking to plant? I'm just citing this as an example because I'm trying to plant a vegetable garden. I'm doing my own research. So, you have to really have these exhaustive, comprehensive answers to show you have this authority. And then AI is going to use your site as an example to quote in those articles and pull out some of that information you're creating.
Chris, let me just get a little clarification. So you say the 36.6% of the clicks if you're cited in the AI overview, and just 19.6%. Again, what was it in the olden days that if you came up on page one, you got what percentage of the clicks?
It's a good question. I don't have an answer for it right off the top of my head. I know it would vary still depending on the search and what position you were, and some of that would depend on the search and some other factors you have, like your snippets and things like that on the page. But in terms of like the clicks through, now that those AI results are there, those are getting nearly double the amount of clicks as just the regular organic search results.
Yeah, I mean, because if you can get all the information on page one that AI crunched for you, you're not going any further. But I know that if someone is trying to get to the top of the search results for a business so that people will make the phone call, the further you get pushed down, the harder it is to get that phone to ring.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the other consideration, which I don't have any data on here, is just the impressions. So if somebody sees you on this page at all, the impressions are going to be going down because the further you're down on this page, the less likely people are to even see you. Never mind if they're going to click through to your website. So, the more real estate you can own at the top of this page, the better. From an AI snippet, from a like a Google Places snippet, which I'll show you. And as you can see, the search results page will vary greatly based on the intent of the search. So when I was searching for best dog beds, you can see the search result page here is more e-commerce oriented. So now I can refine by number of criteria here. It gives me some sponsored links here that I can go now shop directly to those things, and it gives me these other things down here. Now, if I was saying, best architects in Boston, if I do something that now has a best dog groomers, Boston, Mass. If I'm doing something that has what looks like a local intent, now it's going to show me a different results where it's pulling in this map and these Google My Business places. So this is another thing we'll touch on. It's like really critical to make sure you have a Google My Business profile page. And not only is it set up, but it's optimized with all your business information. You're collecting reviews and replying to those in a timely manner. You have, your services. So that's another place where you can own some real estate on a Google search results, in addition to, AI overviews.
Great.
So having really deep, rich content on your website, I'll just show you really quickly the page I'm talking about specifically on mine. So I published this earlier this year, and it's getting a lot of traction from ChatGPT because it is an example of this really robust, comprehensive article. So it's a website guide for builders and architects. And as you can see, we scroll through this, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of content about lead generation. It's a content about custom versus template. We talk about how do I choose between the two, mistakes that people frequently make. We have way down here at FAQs, like a questions and answers section. So this is the type of content AI loves to see because they can cite it. They know it's a lot of rich, deep written content that they're more likely to highlight and focus either in that AI overview or in like a Google chat GPT conversation.
So Chris, in the olden days, I don't know, like last year, I would have told someone to make that guide not available online, but require people to give you an email address to get it so that you can start marketing to them. But what you're saying is that the value of it to AI is high enough that you're willing to give up the fact that people aren't going to have to tell you who they are to get it?
Yeah, and it's it's one of those, it depends. So for me, the value is more getting traffic to this page, having people read through this, and then ideally, if it feels like based on the content they've read, they seem like there's a fit or they like what I have to say, then they would go and fill out the form and kind of become a lead that way. Some of my clients, we still have that like gated content to your point. So we have like a bathroom remodeling budget guide. We drive some traffic to that website, but the bulk of the content is gated in that PDF that you have to provide your information first. So in their case, that information they didn't want necessarily out there. They wanted to make sure people provided some information, and they wanted to kind of have that a little bit more of that, paywall, if you will. And they have other ways in that specific instance that they're trying to generate traffic to that website. But we know like we're probably not getting a lot of traffic from AI to that site because there's just not enough content on that page that talks about those things that AI isn't necessarily going to cite it or highlight it. Where if we took that same page and we broke that down into a 5,000 word article that breaks down every budget price point, what goes into that, price ranges, things that can impact that price range if you're choosing, glass enclosure versus fiberglass and material finishes and things like that. now suddenly that article is going to be much more likely to be cited by AI and feature in the search snippets because it's all that content that's on the site that can be indexed and read by AI and by SEO, by Google search. So yeah, it's a great point, and I'd say there's not like a one size fits all. For some content that you're putting out, it still makes more sense to have that be like a a lead magnet where you require people to put information. I would say you could also do kind of a both. So maybe I have this whole guide, and then my lead magnet is well, how much does the website cost, and then that is where it becomes that they have to fill out the information for that kind of next step from there.
Great, thank you.
So we have all this content, you're trying to create some robust content on your site that talks about some of the services that you do, you're offering, your products, whatever you have. The next rule is to build trust with AI, with Google bots, and really with your users through what Google calls EEAT. And that's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So these are some factors that seem a little bit ambiguous, but they're key things Google looks at and AI looks at to really decide, well, how trustworthy are they? How much should they include your link in those results versus the link to another website or some competitors? And so looking at it through this lens, experience would mean, okay, how can you demonstrate that you have, in my case, I have 20 years of experience with building websites. So how can I bring that up and talk about that throughout the content I'm creating? Besides just saying, I've been building websites for 20 years. Is there some ways you can highlight that? Expertise is similar. I might be building websites for 20 years, but I do it for fun on the side, and my real day job is I trade stocks or something. So I don't necessarily have expertise in it. I have a lot of experience, but not necessarily expertise. But if I'm certified to Google AdWords, I'm certified through MailChimp and through ActiveCampaign, I have these like certifications and qualifications to show that I'm actually an expert in the field. That's where that expertise comes in. So can you highlight some of those things on your site? Maybe you have an About Us page and you highlight certifications that you have, or you have a news and press section and you announce that you just received a new certification and something like that. So you could also maybe not have a ton of experience. You could only be doing it for 2 or 3 years, but you're actually pretty qualified from an expertise standpoint because you have some of those certifications and things like that. We'll get into authoritativeness. So I could be Google AdWords certified and I maybe took the test and passed, but unless somebody else has said that I'm really good at that, it's hard for Google to judge how much of an authority in the space I am. For me, I have a number of awards from the Home Builders Association here in Cape Cod and in Boston. So if I can highlight those on my website, now not only am I qualified because I have the certifications, but I actually have authority in the space because I can say I've written these articles that have been featured on these magazines, or I've been cited by these things, or I have these awards. So it gets more into awards or notable things like that. And then trustworthiness is how well you do in terms of things like Google reviews, again, Yelp or TripAdvisor. Some of this will depend on your business, but is there ways, if you have products on your site, are they getting reviews and feedback on the product pages themselves? So are you trustworthy as well? So these are all things that Google and AI look at as a whole and use in their algorithms to try to decide how much weight they should put into your website. Rule 3 is conversational content wins. So previously, people would try to focus on a keyword or keyword phrase. So like, I need to be #1 for custom websites, Massachusetts, or kitchen remodels, Boston. People are now moving away from focusing on just doing those types of searches for keywords to conversational. So like, how do I plan a kitchen remodel in Boston, or things like that. So having content that is more conversational like that is going to help start to do better than just focus and ranking on just those keywords. A big part of that is if you can put content in that have that sort of questions and answered format. AI and bots love that because it kind of aligns with a lot of the conversations people are having. People aren't just searching for phrase, they're kind of doing those questions. How do I do this? What is the right time to do that? So if you can have that content on your site that's structured like that, that's really great. So yeah, in this website for builders for architects, that kind of same idea. How much should I budget for a custom website? How long does it take to design and build a custom website? Those are those things that people are going to be searching for, and it's not just website builders or website design company. It's more of that structured format like that. So rule 4, cross-platform consistency is key. So who's ever like Googled a business and you're like, oh, it says it should be open, and then you go and show up and they just closed, or they were closed that day or something, right? How frustrating is that? So that is cross-platform consistency. Maybe you check their website, the hours on their website, and they had updated them, and Google had outdated ones. Or maybe they updated on Google and their website was still outdated because they don't update their website that often. I did a search. Used to have an office in Osterville. I moved. I thought I changed everything. I forwarded my mail, but then I forgot to actually update some of my contact information across things like Yelp and other places. So a year or two had gone by, and I looked. I'm like, oh man, that still has my old address, right? And that's what I'm talking about. This cross-platform consistency. I'll show you when we get into the tools and tips a little bit, but there's some tools that you can run where you can plug your website in. It'll scan all these directories. It'll show your information. And then you can say, okay, I need to update it in those places. You can either do that yourself, or there's tools that you can subscribe to and they do it for you. But I'll do that in the demo. But that's just making sure the key ones are your name, address, and phone number, or your NAP. So making sure those are the same and accurate and updated across all these platforms. Again, it helps build the trust and the credibility of your business that it's accurate and it's updated. Rule 5, local optimization still really matters. So 76% of people who search for something nearby visit a business within 24 hours, and 20% of those people result in a purchase. So people doing local intent searches typically are further along in that buying cycle than somebody just doing in that research phase or planning phase. So if I'm searching just like, best ovens 2025, that's a little bit different than this new oven, Whirlpool oven brand on Cape Cod. Now I'm probably much more likely, I'm at that stage where I'm ready to buy that. I'm looking for somebody who carries that nearby. So making sure you have content on your website that is focused on some of those local searches, your address, directions to you, a map, things like that. I ran into this recently. So I found this website. Actually, I saw an ad on my Instagram account for Neptunes. It's like a new music venue here in Cape Cod. And I was like, that's really cool. I love that. I got to the website. I actually reached out to them because I was like, this is so bad.
They fixed it since last week, Chris.
They fixed it. I showed this to Deborah last week, and this wasn't on here. So it just said, find your rhythm. Okay, from live music. Okay, meet us here. But it was on the Cape. Cape has 15 towns. It's 80 miles from one end to the other. It's a huge area, and it's hard to get from one end of the Cape to the other. So I kind of need to know where this is. They did not have anywhere on any information about the address anywhere. I went to every page. I went to the calendar. Maybe it's on the calendar. Nope. I went to the menu page. They didn't have it there. I went to the merch page. They just had pictures of the products that they sell. They did not have their address pretty much anywhere on the site. So I actually reached out to them. I'm like, hey, I just saw your business. It looks great. I'd love to come by, but I have no idea where you're located. And they were like, wow, it's one of those things that it's so obvious to us. We never even stopped to realize we didn't put it on the website. So they just put it here. I'd recommend, if I was, their web company, they should put it here in the footer, have it very clear on every single page, maybe a page in the navigation that says visit us, that shows a map, it shows a picture of the building so that when you arrive, you see what it looks like, you're at the right spot, maybe even directions, how you can get there, maybe if there's a bus station nearby or things like that, if you're traveling from outside of Massachusetts to the Cape for the summer, lodging that's nearby. So I think there's a big opportunity to do much better from a local SEO, but that was an example of they didn't even have their address anywhere on the site. So one of those things you think it'd be obvious. Well, of course I know everyone knows where I am, and it's not. And you need to make sure AI, GPS, and then chat GTP, things like that, and your customers can find out where you are and get to you. So Local optimization still really important. Rule 6, page speed and mobile experience are critical. So if your site doesn't perform that well, you're probably not going to show up on search results and not show up in AI recommendations. They want to make sure if they're sending traffic to your website, people are going to have a good experience when they get there. So, top performing websites in that search results, that 90%, 93% of those that are cited in that top section scored above a 75 on mobile performance metrics compared to just 56% of non-featured websites. I have a tool that we'll go through and we can test this out, but this is the actual tool that you can use to test this. It's Google's own tool called Page Speed Insights. You can just plug your website in here, you click Analyze, it'll go through this whole thing. So we can see right now, like my website scores a 95 out of 100. It gives me a breakdown of all the factors that go into that score, and then it actually gives me some recommendations to how I can improve that. So things like reduce unused JavaScript. Some of the stuff can get a little technical. Some of the stuff might be pretty obvious, like reduce image sizes. You may have like a image on your homepage that is massive that it doesn't need to be that big. So this might help you uncover some easy fixes. Or if you have a developer or somebody that helps you with your website, it's at least a starting point to have that conversation and say, hey, we looked at our insight and our score is only 50. What can we do to improve that? But the higher you can score here, the more likely you are to show up in search results and show up in AI. And then rule 7, and as I've gone through these rules, looking with, again, starting with just having good content, I've tried to put the order of these in the order of easiest to implement. If you don't know technical stuff about websites, you can at least hopefully go to your page and start to add some content, add your address, things like that. And as we get along, it starts to become a little bit more technical, where if you're fairly savvy, it's stuff that you can do, or it might be stuff that at some point it makes sense to just work with your web developer to have them help implement some of these things. And getting to this last one, structure that data. So structured data is becoming more and more critical, and it's a way that you can tell AI and Google and things like that not only what your content is, but like gives it context. So to try to make sense of this, I have this Goodreads page set up here. So I just finished reading this book. It was a great book. I loved it. And we're looking at this, and can anyone tell me like who the author of this book was?
Yeah, it's right there.
Not a trick question.
Tidbeck,
Karen
right?
Tidbeck. Right, exactly, yep. So yeah, it's not a trick question. How do you know that's the author?
It's right underneath the name of the book.
Well, how do you know that's the name of the book?
Because I can see the picture and it's the same name.
Sure. So you're using like these context clues of like, okay, this is the biggest thing. It's at the top of the page. It matches this image. Now, keep in mind, AI and Google can't see images, so they wouldn't necessarily be able to see this. So as a human looking at this, you can make inferences. Okay, this is going to be the title. This is probably the author. This is probably a description of what this is. We know that these are types of genres, so it kind of tells us those things. We're able to understand and infer what this content that we're looking at is. If we just dropped all of this, text, pretend there was no picture, things like that, into something like AI, they may misinterpret that. They may not understand that this is the title or that this is the author. We know this is an author because we can tell it that's a name and it's kind of next to the name of what we can tell is the book. And we're on a site called Goodreads. It's about books. So we have a lot of clues to help us understand that. AI and ChatGPT, Google bots, something like that, are fairly savvy and sophisticated, but they can certainly make mistakes. I've run into it a lot, other people have, where you do a search and they give you all sort of stuff where it's off the wall. So structure, they've come up with this way to structure that data to tell bots and things like that, map what that content is, and then tell the bots what that actually means. So I won't spend a ton of time on this, but you can see there's a ton of structured schemas, and it's a way to basically tell AI what this content is. So it will actually tag this and say, the title of the book is this, the author of the book is this, the rating is this, the description is this, so that when an AI goes to look at this page, it spells it out crystal clear exactly what the content is and how they should interpret that.
And that's in the code of your website.
Exactly. So this is actually schema. I plugged in that same page we're looking at here, and you can see, okay, the code of this is telling AI that this is the book, the name of the book is this, the image of the book is this, the book format is that it's a hardcover, the number of pages, the language is English. So all this stuff, it's spelled out crystal clear. So Google doesn't, or AI doesn't have to make any guesses or assumptions. It can know exactly the type of content it's looking at. So, I'm not an author, you're not an author, but they have schema for almost everything you can have. So I can see for an organization, there are schemas for everything from events, from products, for blog posts, people, local businesses. So there's some tools that you can use to kind of create this schema for this format for tell you what your page is about, and then drop it into your website. So Squarespace has a way you can do that. Things like WordPress have some plugins that will help you do this, but this is kind of like the more harder to implement, but I think has some really good value if you've done the kind of low-hanging fruit in the base level type stuff.
So Chris, let me just see if I can reword what you said. If, for
Sure.
instance, I have a Squarespace or a Wix website and I've just made everything exactly the same, and all I've done is made it look prettier, but I haven't imposed an organization scheme or plan that helps a bot make sense of my content, I might be losing out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. You can have great written content on the page. Schema helps take that good written content and give that extra layer to bots to say, this is a page about our company, and this name here is the name of the company. This number here, 2013, that is actually the year that our company was founded. So it's kind of taking any of that guesswork out, and it's just going to end up giving better quality content to AI.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And again, this you can plug any page in your website in here, run it. If there's no schema set up, it'll just tell you that here, or you can see if it is getting schema and if it's accurate or not. And there's ways to generate schema here, and then you can take that and plug it into your website to help implement that. So again, kind of a extra credit, but I think it is really valuable, again, if you've done kind of some of the other low-hanging fruits. So all right, try to sum all that up into giving you something actionable out of that. And now we can start to look at some of these examples, things like this. But how can you kind of get from all that stuff we just covered and put that into practice? So I put together kind of a 90-day action plan. I put out that timeline. You may take a year to implement this. You could do it faster. Maybe some of these things you won't be actually implementing, but at least it gives you some framework and structure around this. The last thing is, this is kind of the jump start to get you going, but really to have it be effective long term, you need to kind of revisit this periodically. So if you have a new award, publish that on your website. If you got some press locally, put that on your website. If you have some new articles to talk about, the website needs to be continually updated, because if you go through this exercise, you may see a little bit of improvement, but if you stop doing anything, it's going to kind of go back down. It's something you want to continually check up on and put more effort into.
And the other thing is, I mean, Chris, we've been planning this for about 90 days, right? That's about when I asked you to do this. It's changed since we talked about it. It's not like this is going to stay the same, and who knows what the next iteration of AI is going to do to this. So this is a moving target.
It is, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think I put any in the links. If I can find some afterwards, there's some AI blogs that I follow that are specific to more AI as a whole. But yeah, if there's any specific to your industry, or you find something, that's the best way I find to keep up on it, because it's changing so quickly that having some good resources to stay on top of it is really helpful. So the 90 action plan. I structure this as a case study. I think it's just helpful to give it to context of like a real world example. I made this company up. It's not real, but I think it gives people some like tangible, see how this would map to a real client or a real business. So Flowers by Jess, she's a florist in Cape Cod. She does a ton of work in weddings. but she's noticed that she's like seeing a drop in bookings lately. So she wants to improve her website to try to get more customers. She's hoping that will help her start to book more weddings for the summer season. So the first thing she went through is the assess and setup. She conducted an initial audit of the website, and there's a couple tools that I can show you that we can use to kind of do that. One is that page speed insight. So plug your site into here, see what your score is, and start to see if there's some improvements that you can make. This would be more on the technical side of things. The other, and I'll just use this one as an example because it's not a client and it's no one here. This is, actually, I'm going to wait till the Q&A because I think with this tool you can only do one per day with the free level. So we'll try to, this one, SEO site checkup, we can do a demo of this when it's not being recorded.
And
You
all of
plug your
these,
URL in here.
all these tools are in the stuff that we just sent you in the attachments too. So you guys can all check out that.
Exactly. This one, there's another one that we'll look at from moz.org. So most of them, they offer a free tool. And to your point about like, the gated content, they usually will give you some information and then they want you to sign up to use their paid tool to like get more information or to actually make some changes. So I would say use whatever free tools you can to start to get some of this information and then decide if you want to use one to actually further do ongoing research or things like that. Then you can kind of decide after that point. So this is one that will actually give you an audit more from an SEO lens. So less of a technical, but more of a like, do you have good content in your site from like headings and page titles and things like that. So we'll run through that and you can see, kind of break down the report that they show you. But really start to, unless you're like, okay, where are we right now with the website? If we're starting right, we're starting from here as the baseline. How well is our website performing in some of these things from those tools that we can look at? And she realizes her website's missing like key information. Like she actually didn't have her phone number and address on the website anywhere, just like that Neptune's, right? So she can identify some things that can be fixed really quickly and easily that would start to move the needle and improve some of these things. She creates a list of prioritized to-do list, and then she sets up Google Search Console. So who here has Google Analytics on their website? Okay, cool. How about Google Search Console? Is anyone using Google Search Console? Okay. It's not as well known as Google Analytics, but I think it's a really, really great tool. And I think it's actually even more beneficial when you're starting to look at search engine optimization. So I'll just go here and show you. Actually, I'll show after the video. I don't want to show my own Search Console data, but I'll show everyone what's Google Search Console, what that looks like. Any of these tools, I think they're great. Even if you don't look at them that often, it's great to just set up and add and start tracking because you can at any point jump back in and look at that data. So if you're not using that, if you haven't set that up to kind of track and report, you don't have anything to compare to either. So you could start to do all this effort of adding website tags, adding content. And if you don't have a way to measure that, you actually don't know if you're improving or if you're having some stuff besides just, anecdotally, do you feel like you're getting more business or things like that? You have raw data with these tools that you can set up. So
there was a previous webinar on this, and I'll attach that link to watch that one if you guys missed it.
Great. Yeah, it's a great tool. There's, we could do, it sounds like there's an entire webinar just on that. So, and then she starts to build her knowledge base. So she starts to create a plan to create new content on the website that is more focused, it's deeper dive, and it kind of hits those, rules 1 through 7 that we talked about of like, is it authoritative? Is it EEAT focused? A lot of that stuff. So month 2, she starts to go through the actual content updates. She updates things like her critical content, like her navigation, her footer, and her homepage. Like in the footer I talked about, we had, she didn't have her address and her phone number, so she added those in there. She added a services page. This is a big one that I see a lot of organizations make. So let me just show you. These are a couple of clients that we have. This is a builder here, super, super basic site. He basically didn't really want to put a lot of effort into it because he's busy enough as it is, but he just needed to have something to look at. So he doesn't get a lot of traffic from AI or from SEO. And he knows that, and it's sort of intentional. He just didn't really want to have anything. He mostly gets word of mouth or referrals. But The services page is just one page, and it just talks about these three things. You can see there's maybe one paragraph for each of these. It's not really that informative. It's not that robust. It's not going to show up in search results if somebody's looking for home improvements on Cape Cod, because there's not a lot of content here. Contrasting that with somebody like this builder who we work with, we have like dedicated landing pages for each of these things. So here we have, home remodeling, and it's one paragraph. For this builder, we have an entire page that is remodeling on Cape Cod. We have, an image. This paragraph is about as long as this paragraph is. So then we have explore services, whole home, home additions, luxury upgrades, schedule a call. We have more pictures, we have more content. So this ranks much better from an SEO standpoint and some of the other pages we built out from an AI standpoint, because there's just more content there. It's more likely to get recommended by Google because it's actually something worth linking to. So if you have like one page where you talk about your services and that's it, and it's just a little sentence or two of each, it's really not providing a whole lot of information to Google or really to your customers that might be getting to your site. So if you can break each service that you offer, or each product, or maybe each, whatever your business is, into landing pages for each of those, you're much more likely to get traffic to those, specifically for those type of searches. So she started to build up some landing pages. She created a landing page specific for weddings on Cape Cod. That's what she's trying to focus on. So she has now a landing page just for weddings. And then she starts to write some in-depth content. So she's been doing weddings for a long time. She creates an article on her website that are like the best flower arrangements for weddings on Cape Cod, right? So she recommends hydrangeas because they're natural to Cape Cod. They're really popular for weddings. She talks about other things like that, creates a really, really in-depth article talking about that, and now publishes it to her website and starting to get some traffic for people looking for some of those phrases. What is a good wedding arrangement for my wedding on Cape Cod, or things like that. So she kind of starts to implement these initial things that she identified from month one, start to create some content, start to add some of that keyword rich content, that local things. She talks about her location, where her certifications, things like that on the site, and starts to do what I would call like a content upgrade or an update, like really go through and update the existing content and start to add new content to the website. And then month 3, she kind of takes it a little step further. So that article that she wrote that was really, really great about flower arrangements for weddings on Cape Cod, she submitted that to the Knot and to Cape Cod Life, because if she can have them promote it and link to their website, now that starts to build her authority because she's being cited by these really high profile organizations. So it helps to expand her authoritative and credibility, which is going to boost her visibility from an AI standpoint. She also went and updated her third-party profile. So she fixed her name, her phone number across different channels, making sure it's updated and accurate everywhere. And she starts to go through some of those technical improvements. So when we looked at that page speed insights, she realized that there was a bunch of recommendations that she really didn't know how to implement, but it seemed pretty major because her score was so low. So she worked with a developer and they implemented some of those things to get the page speed score better. And then she starts to look at that Google Search Console or Google Analytics reports and sees that based on some of these things she's doing, she's now starting to get more traffic from AI, and she's booked a couple additional weddings than she had before. So kind of chunking this out into learn what you need to do, start to implement that, and then start to see what's working. And like I said, this kind of step 2 and step 3 of continually adding content and monitoring it is going to be an ongoing piece. Even if you can only add 1 or 2 pieces of content, even a quarter, it's better than nothing, and it's going to keep your website current and active, which is really helpful to make sure Google knows that you're paying attention. So I know we just went through a bunch of stuff. I want to kind of talk through some of the next steps. So the takeaways are, as we talked about, we're not just trying to trick AI into showing our site. We're not trying to trick Google search bot or whatever. We're trying to provide good, valuable information that is going to be beneficial from an SEO standpoint, an AI standpoint, but also good for your end users and your actual customers that humans can understand when they get to the site. And the other big one is the results that we're going to try to look at and try to get through some of these tools are going to be achievable, but it's going to take a dedicated effort. You're not going to say, post an article on your website and then tomorrow suddenly see a bunch of new traffic. It will take a little bit of time, but if you continually put this effort in, it's definitely going to be, huge payoffs in the long run. For next steps, I've created this little quick audit. Is your business AI ready? So there's 2 resources here that we'll look at, and I think I have the resources linked. So this resource is this document, which I sent over, and I think Deborah sent it to everyone. This is a bunch of links to some of the things we talked about, and some of the stuff we'll cover next, right after, when we actually plug some things in. It's broken into different sections. So this top is, a link to the slideshow we just looked at. I have an email list that I kind of put out weekly marketing tips and tricks that you subscribe to here. And then the quick audit checklist, which is the other document. There's some great stuff for learning SEO here. These are really, really in-depth, very worthwhile, all free courses that you can take in learning SEO. Anything that they cover from an SEO standpoint is going to will help you be beneficial for AI as well. These are, they're SEO oriented, but they're going to be beneficial from an AI standpoint. And there's a bunch of these tools that, I covered in the call or that we're going to look at next, that I just provided links to, a little context of what those are. So those are a bunch of tools you can look at. And then the other one is this quick start checklist. So I would say, if you're ready to kind of get into this, go through this and just take an afternoon, take a little bit of time and go through this questionnaire and actually try to assess it yourself and be as honest as you can. So, the homepage, does your website clearly explain what your business does within 5 seconds of landing? And if it doesn't, rewrite it to be really, really crystal clear and be expanding on that. And, we can maybe do a walk through a couple of these with an actual person on the call. And as a group, if you feel comfortable having it up here, have us all look at that. We can check it in the page speed. We can see some of these things like that. So there's a number of questions through here. Excuse me. You can rate it for each question, either say, yes, no, or unsure. And then at the bottom, it'll kind of give you an assessment. So if if you've got a 20 to 25 of those, yes, you're doing great. If you've got in this range, it kind of gives you some breakdown and guidance. And ideally out of this, you can see what are the things that you answered no to, and you can start to try to focus and work on those and put an action plan into place to improve your website and get it more AI friendly. So both of those are the resource documents there. And I know I just gave you a fire hose of information. So I was trying to move as quickly as
hang in
possible
there.
so we can still talk and have plenty of time for the Q&A.